Hello and welcome to Terry-ble T.V.'s first Lego build. I'm really excited for this video to be the first one for a jumping off point where we're going to start going through some unique or fun Lego builds, and I'll bring you along for a hyperspace ride from beginning to end with maybe a little bit of education about what I'm working on. Although all the builds coming up are not necessarily exclusive to Star Wars, I do have to admit to you, there are a lot of Star Wars builds coming down the line. And today, we're going to start with one. And this one is probably my all-time second most anticipated set I've looked forward to. And I am so excited to get started on... Yay! The UCS Imperial atat. This set, number 75313, is part of Lego's Ultimate Collector's Series line. As with this set being rated 18+, it's catering more for the adult wishing to build a display piece as opposed to something to play with. Sure, I guess for the most part. This set has a mind-blowing 6,785 pieces as well as 9 minifigures, which at the time of recording this, it's the 6th highest piece count for any one Lego set ever produced, and the 2nd highest piece count for any one Star Wars set. Completed, weighs about 27 pounds. It'll be about 9.5 inches wide, 27 inches long, and nearly 25 inches high. There have been 6 Playscale and or UCS sets that have been produced between 2003 and today, including one that was motorized and could walk. Additionally, there have been 6 mini-scale or polybag sets that have been released as well. Also produced was an Echo-based defense, which was an interactive game where you got to shoot missiles at the atat. And just this past Christmas, we had this cute, highly sought after gingerbread atat with an even more adorable gingerbread Darth Vader. As a fortunate soul who got to experience the first appearance of these behemoths in The Empire Strikes Back in a movie theater, first at Whitwood Pacific Theater and the next week at the La Habra Drive-In, as with many kids, this introduction became one of those Star Wars moments that will never leave us. And this will always be one of my personal top 5 most favorite vehicles that Star Wars has or will ever introduce. That, or all-terrain armored transport, was used by the Galactic Empire as well as the First Order. For the Imperials, this was one of the most fearful symbols of military might. It was developed during the Clone Wars, primarily manufactured in the Kuat drive yards, seen here in Star Wars The Old Republic. However, they were also produced in the Balmoran Arms Factory on the planet Balmora, which is a planet we have only been able to see outside of the comics or the novels in the 2nd season of The Bad Batch. So, with that quick history of the atat out of the way, I'm super excited to get building on this. So, follow me to my Lego table and we'll get going. Only thing left to do is, as Emperor Palpatine would say, would be to do it.
I'm really very happy I finally got to complete this set.
I had given myself a goal of about 15 hours to complete this. I overshot it by quite a bit. Now, admittedly, I've not built a UCS since the release of the UCS TIE Fighter in 2015, so I am a bit out of practice, but I do consider myself an advanced builder. Well, I was absolutely humbled by this one. All in all, this is a really amazing set. It has some incredible designs in it, most particularly the worm gear box setup, so that the legs can be more than sturdy enough to handle the weight, but with the use of a tool, can change the leg's position at both the shoulders and the knees to get the exact position you want to display your model in.
The minifigures included are fun and a really good representation for this set. This build, however, is not perfect by any means. There are some very weak points, and some of them are in key areas. My first issue is the belly. It is held on by about half the studs it needs to, because every little touch, the whole belly section comes loose, and it's very susceptible to gravity. Next, I really have always hated it when you have to attach a hinge or clip joint that requires some force, and the places you need to counter that force is weak or fragile. The headpiece side plates are a great example of being this way. So as wonderful as this design is for the legs and how to allow for motion on it, there are some things that are just really tough to overlook. Well, before I go, let me give my ratings on this set. First, expectation versus reality. How pumped was I for this build, and did it live up to my hype? Well, if my anticipation sits evenly on the 3 of a 1 to 5 scale, I give this a 4.5. Everything was exactly at what I had hoped, but I will give it an extra credit for the leg design. Really impressive. Second, posability or the shelf presence. This gets a 5. This is a massive set and it commands attention. Third, the value for the dollar. At 6,785 pieces and an original MSRP of $799, this equates to just under 12 cents per piece. And there are a lot of small pieces here and not a lot of special molds and very few printed bricks. I have to give this category a 2 out of 5. Fourth, sturdiness. How is this design and strength of the build? I give this a 3.5. The overall foundation and core of this piece is solid as it comes. However, there are a lot of areas in the fine details and greebling that are very susceptible to contact, and pieces fall off very easily. So, the overall score was an average of 3.75. So it's certainly above average, and I say for a LEGO fan who is also an atat fan, it is a must-buy. But consider, it is now a retired piece, so the value category is now very much a question on if you just want this set or not. The value per piece can no longer be a factor, or if it was, not another single one would ever be sold again.
Well, I have to admit, that really was a lot of fun, and I truly hope you enjoyed it as well. I have another build starting soon, and I don't want to spoil what set it will be. I suppose I could give you a little hint. Well, as I close, I will say thank you for joining me, and I'll lastly remind you, you can figure out anything in life that you want to. All you have to do is stare at it for a while. Till next time.